Alright, time for an update and forecast on the lake fire. I'm doing these videos a little bit different than yesterday. Yesterday I did a combined Shelly fire and lake fire, and there's just too many tabs going on, so I separated it. If you want to hear about the Shelly fire, you can find that on my channel, but wanted to do another update on the lake fire because we did have some activity on this yesterday. You can actually see it in this video right here. A few other things that I just noticed from this video, obviously the big smoke plume, but also the steep kind of rugged terrain that we have. Looks like they were getting some retardant on this fire yesterday, where you see that red right there. And then also maybe the first thing that you notice, just how much fuel is in this area as well. So this is just the combination of the entire fire behavior triangle. It's been hot, it's been dry, it looks like it's going to be windier this afternoon. You also have a lot of fuel, and then you also have steep, rugged terrain. So it's basically checking all of the different boxes that would lead to active fire behavior. And given the smoke that you could see right here, which was the fire yesterday, looks like we certainly did have some active fire behavior. So now let's just check out the map of the lake fire. Should probably zoom out, get our bearings, figure out where we are. So here's the Santa Ynez Mountains. You have Santa Barbara down here, and then we have the lake fire up here. So it's call that northeast of Los Olivos. And then interestingly, if we zoom in here, somebody was pointing out that I guess it's like Michael Jackson's old ranch or something, Neverland Ranch amusement park right there. And can't actually see that I'll zoom in so you can see that better. Neverland Ranch amusement park, the fire actually does look like it's gotten fairly close to that location. However, when we look at the heat detections, a lot of the growth on this fire was not on the southern edge yesterday. It was more on the kind of western edge. And actually we can see exactly where the growth was yesterday. If I turn off the most recent perimeter and then we just look at the old one. So that's what it looked like when we're using the mapping from July 7th. And then I believe this mapping is from late last night. We don't have new mapping as of today, or at least this is the newest mapping that we do have. That's the difference in growth between 2 days ago and the growth that we had yesterday. So most of it does look to be on this northern and eastern side of the fire, especially down as we get in to where we kind of had an unburned pocket inside here. The reason I'm thinking about that is because the southern part of this fire is where my biggest concerns are, is because that's where we're closest to the largest amount of structures as you get into Los Olivos. Most of the growth yesterday, though, I will say was in the other direction, kind of moving down on this side of the fire. So I guess in one aspect that would be good news. It appears most of the recent growth was not in the direction of the largest amount of structures. I think a better way to see it perhaps is just this map on watch duty right here, where anywhere where you see that more bright orangish color, that's going to be where the more recent heat has been. It looks like we have a number of aircraft on this fire right now. Some helicopters, looks like a plane, Air Tac 07. And then the numbers on the lake fire, 26,000 acres, so we definitely had some growth yesterday. 12% containment. Evacuation orders and warnings in place. I don't go over those in these videos because by the time a lot of people are watching, the orders might have changed. I do just want to highlight one thing in their update this morning, though. There's a red flag warning issued for the fire area with strong winds, potential for longer fire spotting distances, along with hot, dry conditions. Damage assessments are ongoing. So red flag warning, anytime you hear that, then you know there's the potential for some active fire behavior in the afternoon. This map also just shows where the largest activity was yesterday. It looks like that northeastern side of the fire right there. What else we can do is turn on the current satellites. So I'll warn you, this is usually not as accurate as like the fire perimeter data, for example, but does give us an estimate of where we are still seeing some heat on the fire. So yeah, this one looks more active than the Shelly fire right now. And it's mostly on that eastern side of the fire where, again, it's alignments of steep topography, hot, dry conditions. We're going to have more winds this afternoon, a lot of fuel in the area. And I'm recording this at 11 this morning, so if we have this much activity right now, I'm definitely expecting this fire to be active later this afternoon as well. Now, another thing we could do is turn on structures, where you can see why this fire is a concern. Large amount of structures down on the southern edge of this fire. You notice where the closest structures are, though. That's where we didn't have as much activity yesterday. You're not seeing any of those red stars right there, and those orange dots are where we have some pockets of structures. Now, we do have the largest number of structures down more on this southern side, and I mean, we can actually measure this to see how close it is. It does look a little bit closer than yesterday. So that's going to be about 2 miles. What I'm curious to see on the Google Earth imagery, I believe that's going to be this kind of finger of the fire right here, is to see if we actually had some growth right there yesterday. So if I turn off, yeah, it does look like it continued to grow in that area. And it does look like we still have some very steep terrain and a lot of fuel. So that could be an area where we see growth today. At least we're 2 miles away. And you can bet they're putting a lot of resources on this side of the fire right now. And we can actually check out the resources. We've got, oh wow, that number went up, almost 2,500 personnel, 11 helicopters, 62 dozers. So you know they're putting in some good lines as fast as they can. And I'm interested to see if we have any fire history. We looked at this yesterday. Yeah, this is why I was thinking we should look at it, because it does seem like it played some role on the northern side of this fire. This is 2007 Zaka fire. Now that seems long enough ago that we would have had some fuels grow back by then. So I'd be surprised if the perimeter of our fire just stops in that burn scar because of the fuels that were burnt out in 2007. I think it's more likely that they're able to reuse a containment line on this northern side right there. So that's kind of the two ways previous fires can help you is, one, it clears out the fuels, but then two, you're able to reuse some of the old lines. One concerning aspect, we have the Sedgwick, I don't even know how to say that word, but from 2007, you can guarantee some fuels would have burned back, and we're actually already seeing the fire perimeter go through that burn scar, so it makes sense that, yeah, the fuels have grown back there, so that's not going to help us much. And then you notice there's not any burn history between where we have a large amount of structures with those orange dots and where we have the fire perimeter. So yeah, I'd say that southern edge right there is going to be the part of the fire that I'm the most concerned about and going to be watching the most closely today. But if I'm doing that, you can guarantee that the 2,500 personnel are thinking the exact same thing, and they're going to be throwing a lot at that side of the fire throughout the day today. So now, one thing that's going to have a big impact on our fire activity is the weather forecast. Looks like it's, once again, hot across all of California. That purple is an excessive heat warning. Orange is your heat advisory. And then over the lake fire, this is something different than yesterday and is actually maybe the most important part of the forecast, which I emphasized earlier, is that pink color is your red flag warning. So with a red flag warning, it's usually because you're dry and windy, but we're also hot in this area. Looks like we're in the upper 90s, some afternoon wind gusts over 25 miles per hour. So that's a bit more concerning than it was yesterday. It's coming from the northwest. So what that's going to do, if your winds are coming from the northwest, that's going to try to push the fire down to the southeast. So if we look at some of where the heat was yesterday, we at least didn't have as much heat right here, because then if you had northwesterly winds, that would push it into these structures if you had the fire moving down to the southeast. Most of our activities over here, so those northwesterly winds are going to try to push it into this unburnt area. But yeah, anytime you have gusty winds, a lot of fuel, steep topography, you're kind of setting the stage for an active day. The other aspect, your relative humidity isn't recovering very much overnight. So normally you have overnight recoveries where you got some moisture back into your fuels. But on this fire, especially in the higher elevations where you're above the marine layer, it's been remaining dry. So that's why even early this morning, we're seeing, going back to all satellites, we're already seeing activity on this fire, and it's because it was dry overnight. So then you get into the daytime, and the fuels, instead of having moisture in them, are just primed to light right up once the flames get to them, instead of the flames having to use some of their energy to evaporate the moisture out of the fuels, which could slow a fire down. So just looking at the wind direction, just to kind of visually show what that's doing. You have Los Olivos right there. I tried to click somewhere in here where it would roughly be where the fire was, and you can see those northwesterly winds. So that'll try to push the fire down to the southeast throughout the day today. I also have their instant action plan. I couldn't find the one from today. They hadn't uploaded it yet, but there's still some useful information in here. Control objectives: keep the fire north of Highway 154, keep the fire south of Sisquoc River, keep the fire east of Foxen Canyon, keep the fire west of Happy Canyon. And just because those are the objectives doesn't mean that the fire is not going to stop before those places. It also doesn't mean it's going to stop at those places, but that's the goal. So extended forecast, I had to click this because it's the older report. So day over day changes will be minor Tuesday through Thursday with continued warm and dry weather above the marine layer, so in your higher elevations. That is actually one piece of good news, if we need some silver lining, is where we have the largest amount of structures is going to be in your lower elevations, where you'd have more of a marine influence, so more moisture. Cooler temperatures typically is, sometimes the temperature aspect can be a bit difficult there, because sometimes in your lower elevations you have higher temperatures. But coastal influence bringing moisture in to the area where we have more structures would limit fire activity compared to the very active fire activity we have in the higher elevations, where you don't have those overnight recoveries where the moisture goes back into your fuels. So that's maybe one piece of good news, is that the fire weather isn't as bad where we have the largest amount of structures. And then the fire will generally be fuel and slope driven rather than by significant weather changes. So yeah, it's really checking every box of the fire behavior triangle, though. You got fuel, weather, and topography. And then just to, I think, summarize what's going on here, general north to northwest flow over the fire area will continue to push the fire into continuous older fuels that have not burned in recent history. That's a big part of what's going on this fire. And then the heavy, fine fuel loads and fuels that have been drying under high temperatures are the primary driver of this fire. So the heat wave that we had last week certainly didn't help with this. Dried everything out. In some cases across California, it's record dry fuels for this time of the year. It's important to emphasize that aspect because normally we're drier in August. And then finally, above the marine layer, the fire will burn actively through the night under hot and dry conditions. So just to kind of summarize the lake fire here, we certainly had some active behavior yesterday, as you can see in this video. We're going to have some stronger northwesterly winds today, which will try to push this fire in the same direction it mostly moved yesterday, which was mostly to the east. Main concern on this fire is down to the south, where we have the largest amount of structures. Good news, though, we have around 2,500 personnel in this, a lot of resources who are going to be working hard throughout the day today to protect your lives and your property. So yeah, I'll be watching this one closely, and if there's any changes, I'll do some more updates. You could stay tuned for continued updates in future days. Thanks for watching.